All right, everyone, it is interview time, and we are here with repeat guest, Dr. Alison Ash, who actually just got married this last week. Congratulations, Dr. Alison Ash. Are you sticking with Ash, or are you changing your name? Are you doing the name change?
I'm going to be Dr. Alison Ash.
Nice.
That's staying.
That's what I was hoping for. It's a great name. And and it's your name. So, okay. So you have been on our show. Okay. Is it 4 or 5 times now then?
I think this might be my 5th time.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So we just had you on in the fall and this is coming out in the winter of 2023. Actually, hello, happy 2023. This is the future because we are now in 2022 as we're recording this. How's the future, everyone? And we are here to talk about pressure during sex, how it shows up, how it's different from new relationships, casual sex to long-term relationships, and what are the tools to work with pressure, or I guess against it, because pressure generally isn't that helpful, at least other than my G-spot. My G-spot likes some pressure. But when it comes to relationships and sex and relating in most other ways, not so much. So we'll get there in a second. But can you please tell our listeners, especially the ones that are new and haven't heard your past episodes, how did you get to where you are today in the field of sexuality?
Well, let's see. I think my career started with my PhD at Stanford, where I specialized in gender and sexuality. And I did a lot of research on the college hookup culture and the orgasm gap and queer pathways towards exploration and new identities. And so it was a really wonderful place to learn a lot of skills and get my feet wet. And also really realize that what made me come alive was teaching, more so than doing research, and that I wanted to expand the education that I was really learning and acquiring and refining and being able to offer it to a much wider audience and to be able to create experiential real world change for folks.
Yeah, that's great. You still have the #1 episode, most listened to, downloaded episode in Shameless Sex. It is How to Eat Pussy Like a Champ. And year after year, was that the first one that we did?
I think it's the second one.
Okay, yeah. Was the second one. Every time you're on the show, y'all know that she just has the most amazing information. And in general, you just share really quality advice and tips and all of this. And this subject, sometimes pressure, unless you're singing a David Bowie song, like Under Pressure, it's not really, it doesn't sound sexy. However, we can shift that and change a little bit about what people know about pressure and sex, because pressure is not super fun. It's like, makes me sweat, not in a good way. I do really well under pressure. So what are some reasons people feel pressure around sex? Let's start there.
Yeah, I think folks feel pressure because they think that they should be different than how they are, feel different, experience something different, or perhaps they're trying to change somebody else's experience or influence it, wanting them to feel or think a certain way or not feel or think a certain way. We can feel pressure around a sense of obligation. Anytime that shoulds come up, I think shoulds are a real clear indication of pressure. I should be fill in the blank, right? We feel pressure to perform, to be sexy, to be appealing, to get hard, to stay hard, to have an orgasm, but not have too messy of an orgasm, to be a competent lover, right? All of that can be a real source of pressure, as well as navigating, I think, differences in libido or differences in desire. Your partner wants different things than you do. Even something as simple as a special occasion like a birthday or an anniversary can create a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of pressure all over in the world, and it might not even be in your sex life, but it could find its way into your sexual world, like into your bedroom, even though it's not related, right? Mm-hmm. I know for myself, when I experience a lot of other stress and outside pressures, I definitely don't show up as like the shiniest sexual being. Okay, so since we're saying it so many times in this podcast, pressure, can we please define what pressure is, I guess, specifically in sex? Is it the same as coercion, like someone's kind of pushing me in a certain direction where they're trying to get me to have sex a certain way? Like, are they similar or different?
They're very related. I think of pressure as being more self-imposed. And it can come from external influences, of course. That's where we adopt these narratives and these beliefs and these stories about how we should be in a sexual realm. but we internalize it, and then we put self-imposed pressure on ourselves to show up a certain way because we feel guilty or we feel ashamed, or as I said, we feel obligation, whatever else that may be. Coercion is externally imposed, and it's coming with the intention of overriding somebody's genuine or authentic no. It can include guilt tripping, threats, even physical force, and it's really coming from this place of, I care about getting what I want more than I care about you or your experience.
Yeah, well, I've been there. I can't speak for everyone out there, but I know that not coercion per se. However, I've put pressure on myself sometimes it's good. Okay. For self-pleasure practices, we talk a lot about self-pleasure practices and keeping that as a regular routine, right? So you're routinely doing that. And sometimes it can feel like you're pressuring yourself. Like, I need to do this because I'm trying to explore my pleasure, or I want to be a better lover. So I'm putting pressure on myself. I should do this with my partner because I want to be this amazing lover. And I think that taking the pressure off when it's just this pressure cooker it's easier said than done, right? So anyway, I was just a tangent because I'm relating to this topic a lot. Even now, even since we've had shameless sex, I still put pressure on myself to have sex. I'm like, I don't want to lose it, so I better use it, right? I'm like, oh. But
is that like maintenance for your relationship or for your own body?
For both, because I feel I have this idea that an orgasm a day
like an apple.
Yes, it's like it keeps me young. I don't know if that's even legit, but that's how I feel. It's what I've told myself. So that's a side note for Dr. Allie later to go over.
With me?
So dating versus long-term relationships. How does pressure operate differently in new encounters versus long-term relationships?
Yeah, I think that in newer relationships, there's less trust, there's less familiarity and comfort. And oftentimes we feel more pressure around forming that good impression, around being a competent lover, or being able to meet our partners in the way, or lovers in the way that they want to be met. Pressure in long-term relationships, I think, stems from a couple factors. And one of them is the fact that NRE wears away. NRE, new relationship energy, is actually very much a physiological experience of being flooded with all sorts of hormones like oxytocin and norepinephrine. And all of these chemicals increase your libido. It gives you that 16-year-old falling in love feeling. And it can make your sex drive a lot higher, and it can make pathways into sex a lot easier, meaning that you can have quickies and you can have access to just more easeful sex. And I think in long-term relationships, in the absence of that chemical support, folks need longer and more in-depth pathways and escalation patterns and ways to find their turn on and cultivate their erotic desire. And that can create a lot of pressure because things change and we want them to be how it used to be back when we were having this kind of physiological experience. And so we feel like we're not measuring up to it. We can feel pressure to keep it interesting, or, it can start to feel like a chore or an obligation, especially when you're having sex when you don't want to be having sex. And then that can also create a sense of pressure around it as well.
Okay. So is there a time where pressure can be helpful, like self-pressure can be helpful to move you into a direction of sexy time or sexiness where it's like, oh, maybe this pressure could be good for me because maybe I can use this as fuel because I want to have more sex with my partner, but I'm making up excuses and then I should myself. Is there a way to flip that script?
Well, I think what you're talking about is the relationship between desires and goals and pressure, right? We can have a very genuine, authentic desire and goal, and then we put a lot of pressure on ourselves around the ways that we're maybe falling short or whatever else we criticize about how we relate to that goal. And so I think in those cases, what can be so helpful is to slow down, to notice what's underneath the pressure, which is here a genuine desire for connection. And then to examine the ways in which you're relating to it in a very goal oriented dynamic, because when we approach intimacy with goals, that's what increases and amplifies pressure. And so oftentimes when I'm working with couples who are experiencing pressure, I want to help them reframe sex as intimacy. Any type of intimate encounter is a win. It's credit in your intimacy bank that feeds your overall intimacy, that makes all sexual interactions, encounters, including sex, more accessible and abundant and yummy. And so you're creating just the opportunities for an authentic unfolding without feeling like there's a destination that you have to get to. Oftentimes, especially in long-term dynamics, if my partner says, "Hey, Allie, do you want to have sex?" it feels like a really big leap and jump from wherever I'm at in my day-to-day world to having sex. But if he says, "Hey, do you want to get naked and cuddle?" or something that feels like a more accessible yes, then it actually is giving time for my desire to build and unfold. But if I feel like if we make out or have a naked cuddle, I'm obligated to have sex, or I don't know how to stop that or de-escalate it, then I'm never going to want to do that naked cuddling, because then I'm going to feel pressure that has to turn into something else. So how do we reframe sex as allowing for the authentic unfolding, the rightness of each moment, rather than some sort of objective to complete?
Yeah, I like that. I was trying to think of the ways that I pressure myself in sexuality, and I really can't think of, when I use the word pressure and that definition of it, like a great example of it really serving me in a positive way. But I think having goals or desires, like you're talking about, to be connected to my partner that aren't goal oriented, like we must have penetrative sex every day, otherwise we're broken. Or if we start touching, it has to lead to that. Or, there's these different variations of it. But I think just the desire to be connected and sexually connected really serves me. But if I pressure myself, that has to be a certain way or happen a certain amount of or certain frequency, then it's problematic.
You were talking about the other day too, where you put not pressure on yourself, but you're like, I never orgasm this way from
Rarely
oral.
from oral sex.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like almost like telling yourself this story, and then you didn't pressure yourself, but you told yourself a different story during oral sex, like I will orgasm or I can orgasm.
I tried Forrest's tool. Yeah, this is the tool that Forrest shared when we did the prostate episode. That one.
Yes.
Yeah. He said it's like almost like also Barbara Carrella says, "Fake it till you make it," but not faking orgasms, everyone. But it's instead of saying like, "I'm not going to come from this, from cunnilingus," because I generally don't, but I have, but it's rare. He was saying not from anything with sex, is just tell yourself a different story. I think I'm coming. I think I'm coming. I think I'm coming. And I totally saw this shift in it. But that was, again, that's not pressure. And I'm not pressured to orgasm in that way. My partner doesn't pressure me. I don't pressure myself. It's more like I'm resolved. But I'm trying this different thing to say, oh, well, maybe there's other options there. And maybe my resolution to just be like, whatever. Anyways, let's talk about some helpful tips. I just shared one, at least that works for me. But it wasn't about pressure necessarily.
But some people might feel pressure when their partner is going down, right?
Plenty
so
of people do.
It kind of aligns.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, it sounds like what you're talking about, Amy, is really engaging in intentional and empowered exploration.
Mm-hmm.
And that is exploring, okay, what happens for me when I remove this former narrative and think that anything is possible? In other words, when I combat some self-fulfilling prophecies that we can all have around wanting our body to show up a certain way, and then the more we're anxious about it, or the more we believe it's not going to happen, the more likely that is to be the case, right? And that is a form of pressure. It's a form of performance pressure. And you were able to shift that into, okay, let's just be explorative here and see what's possible. Mm-hmm. And that helps to remove the goal of, I have to come from oral sex or else I'm broken, which is not your narrative, but so easily could have been how you related to that experience.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it was powerful in that experience. I didn't have an orgasm, everyone, from it. I was like, but if the orgasm is like a 10, where I'm like, okay, that's a clear orgasm, I was hanging out like an 8, and that was, that was awesome. I could hang out an 8 for a long time. I don't have to go to the 10. So, but anyways, okay, so helpful tips to start turning the pressure valve down. And I'm curious about both within ourselves, because you're saying pressure often comes from our own selves, but also with sex with others. How can we turn that pressure valve down?
Well, when we're thinking about what we can do with ourselves, one of the best tools that we have is embodiment, because pressure is a heady experience. It's analytical, it's critical, And it's an experience of kind of feeling stuck in our heads often. And so the alternative there is to be able to more fully inhabit your body, to be able to feel the sensations and the pleasure and your desire, and to be able to notice what's happening for you internally can be an anchor that helps you get out of those spinning thoughts that you might have. And so practicing embodiment is a wonderful thing that you can do. And sometimes that might be even just naming, hey, I'm in my head, because it can be a very isolating experience to be stuck in your head, especially if you're trying to mask that because you don't think you should be stuck in your head. So not only are you now in your head about how you think you should be performing differently sexually, but now you're also in your head about how you shouldn't be in your head, right? It's a double whammy. And this happens so often to us. And so if we can name it and make it a shared an opportunity for a different kind of intimacy through vulnerability and something that we can explore together. And I think what's really important, either if you're doing it on your own or when you're sharing it with somebody else, is to not make it a problem, to normalize it. Everybody gets stuck in their head. Everybody feels pressure sometimes. I often feel pressure when it comes to sex, and I'm often naming it with my partner. And when I do, he says, "Oh, high pressure." And then he offers me reassurance, which is just that we don't have to go any specific place. This doesn't have to look any specific way. Let's just be with each other and explore and see what feels good and honor the rightness of the moment. That's our theme. And I think that's so valuable for folks to have. And in that, knowing that you can de-escalate if it's going too fast or in a direction that you don't want it to go, or that you can redirect it into something that would feel more pleasurable for you instead, or that you can finish and complete when you feel done. All of that helps to reduce pressure around where it's heading and allows you to just be in the present moment. And I think also what's so helpful is to never schedule sex.
Oh, really?
Whoa, we always say schedule it. Okay.
Well, so when you say sex, you're talking about penetration or any kind of sex?
Penetration.
Okay, got it. Okay, because okay. Yes, agreed.
Yes,
yeah.
but schedule time for intimacy.
Yeah.
Okay,
yes. No, yes,
And
got it.
When you're meeting up for your intimacy dates, have a menu of ways that you can connect with each other that could be attending to your emotional connection, your physical, or your sexual connection. Things that might feel really quick, like the ability to be 5 minutes long versus things that feel really in depth, so that you can let your desire be explored and unfold. And really, this is so true for, I think, women in heterosexual relationships. Desire is something that builds as a process is unfolding. And so it's important to create the conditions for desire to come online and for us to get into our bodies and for us to feel our authentic turn on. And if we're doing that in a container of this is moving towards sex, that's going to be a recipe for pressure.
Yeah, that's when you said it, I was like, we've been doing it wrong. But yeah, the penetration piece for sure, we 100% agree. And I think that's hard for a lot of people, the scheduling sex part. A lot of people are actually, and let's say intimacy, let's say scheduling intimacy and not sex. A lot of folks, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, they think that sex shouldn't be that. And that's another form of pressure, I guess, that sex should be a certain way and we shouldn't have to schedule it. But I tell you, I don't even have kids, but you have kids and you have 3 jobs or one or the other, or you own a home or 5 dogs, I don't know, a lot of families, sick family member, or you're just a human. Sometimes scheduling intimacy is really important. So what would your advice be for those folks? I know it's not exactly like a part of pressure, or maybe it is, but for people who are like, sex shouldn't be a scheduled thing, it should be spontaneous.
Well, I think that we can remove the should with I want. I like it when sex is spontaneous. And also, I think it's important to embrace a wide range of ways that sex can happen in your relationship. I think for most folks, they might say, I love spontaneous sex, but I also just love sex. Mm-hmm. And, if one can help feed the other, because when you're having a more connected relationship, when you feel more emotionally connected, when you feel more embodied, when you have more experience exploring your turn on, it makes it easier to have more spontaneous sex. But if you're going from very little sex to thinking all of a sudden we should be having spontaneous sex, it's just really imposing a belief system that actually is pretty non-normative. In other words, it's very rare for that to be the case, but it's the result of the myth of normality. I don't know if I've talked about this on the show before or not, but the idea of the myth of normality is that people only talk about what they think is normal. And so then it really perpetuates this belief that that's actually what is normal because that's all that's being talked about. But what's really normal is probably what's happening in the fringes that people aren't talking about because they don't believe that it's safe to talk about it. They're too worried about being shamed by it. So I think that if you had a focus group of, 20 couples, you would find that most of them are not having a lot of spontaneous sex. And so where can we notice where we're adopting these belief systems that we've gotten from rom-coms and other places in society that tell us that this is what, if you find Mr. or Mrs. or whoever right, this is what your sex will look like. And then when it falls short of that, we beat ourselves up or we question the strength of our relationship.
Yeah.
Well, in long-term relationships, come on, it's nearly impossible to always be in sexual alignment with another person or persons. It's possible for sure, but just everybody's experience in life is different. Everybody's stress levels are different. Everybody is, we're all humans. So we're having these very diverse range of experiences. And so I think in long-term relationships specifically, if you're with someone, which is what this question lies within, if you're with someone and they're pressuring you to have sex, what do you do? What's your advice on this?
Or they're pressuring you. My question around this is specifically those people that really want you to come. Like, let's say my partner really was pressuring me to have an orgasm from oral sex, and it's really important to them, or from penetrative sex. Like, say I couldn't orgasm penetrative sex, and for them it's really important, and they're really kind of like pressuring me to do that.
Or to give a blowjob, or to do cunnilingus.
Yeah,
like, come on.
But I think that there's a difference because that's more like there's one's coercion. Like, can you do this for me? So like, can you suck my dick? But the other ones, I want you to change your body's performance on how you receive and experience pleasure for me so I feel worthy. And that's a common thing. And I think it's created both ways because then I can buy into it and be like, and maybe they didn't even pressure me and I created it. Oh my God, I need to please them. Like maybe they didn't even say anything. Like, I really want you to come for penetrative sex. You never do. And I really wish you could. Maybe they didn't even do that, but it's more like, I feel like I'm broken. So but I'm taking it more like that other direction of, what if that my partner is the one that is stating these things? Like, I really want you to do this in a certain way. And how do I navigate that?
Yeah, both of these are really good questions, and let's answer each of them. So when we're thinking about partners pressuring us to have our bodies perform differently, and I think orgasm is a common one, but also if we're thinking about the reverse gender dynamic, it might be, I want you to be hard or to stay hard or not come so soon or whatever else that may be. And I think that the reality is that exacerbates pressure, which makes it so much more difficult to have the outcome that the other person is so invested in having, right? The hardest way to come is to try really, really hard. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, the easiest way to come is to be told you're not allowed to, right?
Yeah.
So, it's hot.
Agreed. And then I come. Okay.
That's right. Big and hard. So I think what can be so helpful is to deconstruct that and to just have a very vulnerable conversation, which is, I really get that you're invested in me orgasming. And I know that it's because you want me to experience a lot of pleasure. And I know it's also because you want to know that you're doing a good job. And I get it. And I want you to know that I'm experiencing a lot of pleasure, whether I'm orgasming or not. And that what's so helpful for me to have my fullest capacity for pleasure is to de-emphasize orgasm and just focus on the journey and how good all the pleasure is that I'm experiencing. And if orgasm happens, amazing. And I get that this might be something that's a disappointment to you, but your pressure actually creates disconnection for me and makes me feel less excited to have sex. And I think that that's like really just important to call out and to name, because that dynamic needs to get interrupted. It's just, it's harmful, I think. And part of what they're needing is reassurance that you're enjoying it. And so you can offer that reassurance and tell them what you are authentically enjoying. Don't perform pleasure, but reveal your authentic experience of pleasure. and to help them start to de-emphasize orgasm as the goal. I mean, if you think about it, even if you have a really massive explosive orgasm, it's still such a small percent of the time that you're experiencing pleasure with somebody else. I loved earlier your story, Amy, because you were talking about how much you loved riding the eights of the oral sex. And I cheered inside when you were saying that, because what a powerful reframe of, yeah, riding the edge is hot and fun and yummy, and there's no failure if I don't climax. And that's the reframe that I think is important to have. And if your partner is unwilling to meet you there, that might be a good filter for you around whether or not this is a good match for you.
Yeah.
I think if somebody's pressuring your body to be different than how it is, that needs to be examined.
Yeah. I personally, I think April too, we both love sex toys, right? You love sex toys. We use sex toys often in our play. I have a lot of my orgasms from sex toys or from sex with sex toys. And let me tell you, when I use my Satisfier or various sex toys on my own, I have great orgasms, but I have better orgasms when I use that and I have the cock like kind of just like barely inside of me, or like it said, there's, because my labia gets less stimulation. So it enhances my orgasm. But if I was with a partner who was like, you need to not use that sex toy, I need you to orgasm just for my dick alone, that would be a problem. And I've been in relationships like that before, actually, where they didn't say it that exact way, but kind of like, what's wrong with you? Why do you really like seem like you need this thing, or you want to use this thing often or all the time? And so that would be problematic for me, because that's something that I really fucking enjoy. So
then I kind of feel shame. That's happened to me before, where I'm like, is something wrong with me because I'm using a sex toy? And that was before I know what I know now. And I had shameless sex where I'm like, I don't give a fuck. This is what I want to do. Like, let me go.
Well, then we end up pressuring ourselves to change. And that's, it's this whole dynamic, instead of, in this more empowered state where we're like, actually, no, this doesn't work for me. But, 25-year-old Amy and April, different story. So what if I am the partner who is it the maybe the advice is reframing in my own brain, but I'm the partner who feels my own internal pressure that I need my partner to get off during a certain way, or, I need sex to look a certain way to feel worthy. And I'm kind of stuck in that. I've actually, we received a sex question from a listener recently who's listened to our podcast many times. I think it's a vulva owning human who's dating a penis owner. And this person is aware of all the advice we give about not making it goal oriented, not making orgasm the end goal, but they can't get over the fact that their partner doesn't have orgasms during sex. Their penis owning partner isn't orgasming. And it's really hard for them. The partner's like, I'm having great sex. I'm having a good time. Like, I'm really happy.
They're like not ejaculating?
No, they're not having or ejaculatory orgasm. Yeah, okay. They're not. And so for the other partner, the vulva owning partner is like, even though they know that they should reframe it and kind of move beyond being so attached to their partner orgasming a certain way or having an orgasm, they're having a really hard time doing it. And it's feeling really important to them, almost like a barrier. So what would be your advice be for either that person or someone else who might not be aware, listening to Shameless Sex or is new?
Well, I think it's helpful to deconstruct where that's coming from, right? So if we're thinking, you're describing a heterosexual dynamic, when we're thinking about how we've been socialized around heterosex, we have been taught to believe that a signifier of a man's desire is his penis being hard and ejaculating. And we've been taught that women's purpose and role in society is to be sexually attractive and to be capable of giving pleasure. And so then women get very invested in the sight of ejaculation as confirmation of a job well done to feed her own sense of self-esteem. And then for men who have a hard time ejaculating, they know that, and then that increases their self-imposed pressure to ejaculate because they want their partner to feel good. It has nothing to do about their own pleasure anymore. And then that makes it harder for them to actually ejaculate, right? And this is a dynamic I see often when I'm working with clients. And so part of what I do is help to name that and really explore that so that they can see where these influences are coming from. And then I really help them explore ways to offer that reassurance, to reveal enjoyment so that there is that input of information that might not be coming from ejaculation, but it's coming from a more verbal or other kinds of physical demonstrations of pleasure. And then exploring what are some ways that human might be able to ejaculate that's maybe not around penetrative sex. It's actually not uncommon for couples to have penetrative sex and then for one or both of them to orgasm after penetrative sex. with a sex toy, through masturbation, through oral sex, whatever else it may be. And maybe that's partly what this human could benefit from, is penetrative sex is actually harder, more pressure for him to, or for them to orgasm that way. So they would benefit from being able to have more options on the table. And this is one of the things that I think hetero folks can deeply learn and benefit from queer culture and community, which is that they have so normalized nonlinear and non-penetrative focused sex. And I think that that creates so much permission for folks to be able to not have to go in a linear way, meaning making out, to touching and fondling, to oral sex, to penetrative sex, to mutual orgasm through penetrative sex. That's the narrative that we believe. But if we think that it can end at any point, or we can go from oral to penetrative sex, back to oral, back to hand job, or that I can complete and feel done and my partner can finish and complete next to me and I can offer a helping hand or a sexy gaze or whatever else it is, permission. I mean, that's the theme here, is the cure for pressure is to be given, either by yourself or by your partner, hopefully both, permission for it to look however it's going to look, for it to unfold in a variety of different ways. And so I think the more that that couple de-emphasizes orgasm through penetrative sex, the greater their capacity for pleasure will be overall. And also, I think the more that it might put that option on the table, if it's not something that feels so fraught with all of this other meaning.
Permission. And the antidote, is that the right word? The cure for pressure?
The script.
The script. I like it. Doctor's orders.
Yes, Dr. Allie said. So you have a course, I believe, coming up after this podcast airs. And also, we know that you do a lot of wonderful work with other people. And can you let folks out there, the listeners, know how they can find you, the course that you're going to be offering, and if they want to work with you, if you're still doing, I guess helping people. And what do you want to say? Therapizing them? I don't know. Changing their lives, really, is what you're doing forever.
I appreciate that support and love. You two are so good at uplifting the people who are on this show, and it's just a really, really wonderful experience to be a guest.
We have to be your fan to do that, So
we're actually genuine. Selfish because we love you.
Yeah,
well,
we do.
It's so mutual. Well, my website is turnon.love. And when you go there, you can find out about my wide range of offerings, including my on-demand content, this course that you were mentioning, which is called Sexual and Emotional Intimacy Skills Master Course. If you want to go directly to that page, you can go to turnon.love/intimacy. And this is an 8-week live virtual class that we meet weekly on Tuesdays. And we have a really large curriculum that we cover, including how to navigate pressure, but also things like embodiment and skills for more emotional depth and safety, and flirting and seduction, and how to increase your capacity for pleasure, and exploring fantasies and unpacking shame. I mean, the list just goes on.
What's the name of that workshop again?
Sexual and Emotional Intimacy Skills Master Course. It's an 8-week class. Yes. And it's available for folks across the globe. All of the classes are recorded. So if you can't attend live or want additional review, you can access it that way. And I do teach it live only once a year in January. So I'm so delighted to be offering it again. And if you are happening to listen to this podcast another time throughout the year, you can access it on demand. So please know that's also an option. And yes, I am still working with individuals and couples, helping them to cultivate and sustain more intimacy in their life. And I also have a team of amazing coaches who I'm working with, who are allowing me to expand my reach and to serve more folks. And so it's just been really wonderful to be able to broaden my capacity to help folks. And if you're interested at all about my coaching services, please feel free to reach out.
And you're still working with at Stanford, or is that okay?
That's correct. Yes. I lecture there. And this section,
no big deal, just Stanford, y'all. Okay?
And this class, this master course I'm referring to, I also teach at Stanford. And so it's a really great opportunity to access some of that material that oftentimes can feel locked in academia, and to really be able to reach more people.
That's actually a really great feature of the class, everyone. So go check that out, turnon.love/intimacy. And there's a lot of other resources on that website that Dr. Alison Ash offers. So check that out. And thank you from the bottom of, I'll speak for both of us, from the bottom of our hearts, Amy and I. And thank you to all of our listeners out there. Amy and I value you so much. We think about you and talk about you all the time, and we love you sincerely. If you love us, I'm just going to invite you to do two things. Number one, this podcast is made possible because we carefully choose our sponsors. And when you buy the products that are obviously being offered by them through us, that helps us maintain and sustain our ability to have this show, because we have to eat, we have to walk our dogs and have a house to live in too. So please check out our amazing sponsors and buy their shit. We select them carefully. I'm telling you.
But it's not shit. It's really wonderful.
It's just, it's a figure of speech.
And the sponsors are help what keeps this podcast free for you. So
exactly. That's why it's free. So instead of fast forwarding, just listen to some of the things you might enjoy that. That was one invitation. The other invitation is please give us some 5-star reviews, Spotify and iTunes. That helps people find Dr. Alison Ash's work, and also all of the myriad of educators and doctors and authors and folks that we have on the show. It helps more people get their sexual mastery on, right? So however that looks. So that's all I have for you. In listener land, we love you so much. We drop an episode every single Tuesday. So we say, see you next Tuesday. Ciao for now.